This story that seemed impossible actually happened to me. I was so shocked when it happened. Let me tell you about it. Come with me as we begin. I used to believe that family was the safest place in the world. I thought the people who shared my blood would always protect me. But my sister's wedding changed everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the people I called my own. The person who finally stood up for me was someone I never expected. Before we dive in, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where it all began, so you can understand why that wedding day shattered everything I thought I knew about my own family. My name is Thalia, and I am 32 years old. I work as an interior designer at a small but respected firm in Minneapolis. I have always loved creating beautiful spaces, turning empty rooms into places where people feel at home. But growing up, I never quite felt at home in my own family. My father, Gerald, is 61 now. He owns a hardware store on the east side of the city, the kind of place where everybody knows his name and he knows theirs. He is a practical man, not much for emotions or deep conversations. My mother, Donna, is 58. She has been a homemaker her entire adult life, and she cares deeply about what other people think. Appearances matter to her more than almost anything else. And then there is my sister, Margot. She is 3 years older than me, 35, and she works as a lawyer at one of the biggest firms in the state. Margot has always been the golden child. She was the one who got straight A grades without seeming to try. She was the one who made the cheerleading squad and dated the quarterback. She was the one our parents bragged about at every family gathering, every holiday dinner, every chance they got. I was different. I was quieter, more introverted. I loved art and design, spending hours sketching furniture layouts and color palettes. While Margot was out winning debate tournaments and prom queen titles, my parents never understood my passion. They called it impractical, a waste of time. They said I would never make a real living drawing pictures. The favoritism started early and never stopped. When Margot graduated from college, our parents bought her a brand new car, a silver sedan with leather seats and all the upgrades. When I graduated 2 years later, I got a card with $50 inside and a reminder that I needed to start paying rent if I was going to keep living at home. I saved for 3 years to buy my own car, a used compact with over 80,000 miles on it. I was proud of that car because I earned it myself. Margot knew she was the favorite and she used it. She would make little comments in front of our parents, subtle jabs that sounded like jokes but cut like knives. She would say things like, "Thalia is the artsy one," which is just a nice way of saying she could not handle real academics. Our parents would laugh, and I would force myself to laugh along, because what else could I do? But here's the thing. Despite everything, I loved my sister. I looked up to her in so many ways. I told myself that the teasing was just sibling rivalry, that deep down she loved me too. I made excuses for her behavior year after year. I told myself that when we got older, when we were both adults with our own lives, things would be different. The competition would fade. We would become friends, real friends the way sisters are supposed to be. I held on to that hope for a long time. I held on to it even when the evidence kept piling up that maybe I was wrong. 2 years before the wedding, Margot met Derek at a charity gala downtown. She came home that night glowing in a way I had never seen before. Derek was 34, a surgeon at one of the best hospitals in the region. He came from a wealthy family, old money, the kind that owns lakefront property and has buildings named after them. Our parents were thrilled. A surgeon, from a good family. This was exactly the kind of match they had always dreamed of for their perfect daughter. They talked about Derek constantly, about his career, his family's connections, his future. It was like Margot had won the lottery, and by extension, so had they. I only met Derek a handful of times over those 2 years. He would come to family dinners occasionally, always polite, always well-dressed. He did not talk much, which I found strange for someone in his position. He seemed to observe more than participate, watching the dynamics at our table with quiet attention. I remember catching his eye once when Margot made one of her usual comments about me. He did not laugh like everyone else. He just looked at me for a moment, his expression unreadable, before turning back to his meal. I did not think much of it at the time. I figured he was just reserved, maybe a little shy despite his success. I had no idea that he was paying attention to everything, storing it all away, waiting. The announcement came at a Sunday dinner in early spring. Margot stood up from the table, Derek beside her, and declared that they were engaged. The ring on her finger was enormous, a diamond that caught the light and scattered it across the dining room walls. Our mother screamed with joy. She literally screamed, jumping up from her chair and throwing her arms around Margot. Our father was right behind her, shaking Derek's hand with both of his. His face split in the biggest smile I had seen in years. They were so happy, so proud, so completely focused on Margot that I might as well have been invisible. I stood up too, my heart genuinely full of happiness for my sister. Whatever our differences, this was a big moment. I walked around the table to hug her, to tell her congratulations. But when I wrapped my arms around her, she barely responded. Her body stayed stiff, and she patted my back twice, like she was humoring a child. "Thanks, Thalia," she said, already looking past me toward our parents. And then, just loud enough for everyone to hear, she added, "I hope you can actually be helpful this time, unlike at my graduation party." The room went quiet for a second. My graduation party for her had been 5 years ago, and I had worked so hard to make it special. I had baked a cake from scratch, decorated the backyard, invited all her friends. But the cake had been slightly lopsided, and she had never let me forget it. Our parents laughed, brushing it off as Margot being Margot. Derek said nothing, but I noticed him watching me again, that same quiet observation in his eyes. A week later, Margot asked me to be her maid of honor. We were at a coffee shop, just the two of us, which was rare. She said she wanted me by her side on the most important day of her life. She said it would mean so much to her. I was touched, genuinely deeply touched. I thought this was the turning point I had been waiting for. This was my sister reaching out, choosing me, valuing me. I said yes immediately without hesitation. I promised I would do everything in my power to make her wedding perfect. She smiled and said, "Good. I will send you the list of everything you need to do." The list arrived the next day. It was 4 pages long. Over the following months, I learned that being Margot's maid of honor meant being her unpaid wedding planner, personal assistant, and emotional punching bag, all rolled into one. She wanted me to coordinate with vendors, manage the bridesmaids, handle last-minute emergencies, and do it all with a smile. The bridesmaid dresses were the first problem. Margot chose a designer gown that cost $500. She did not offer to help pay, did not even consider that this might be a lot of money for some of us. I pulled the cash from my savings account, money I had been setting aside for a vacation I had been dreaming about for years. I told myself it was worth it. This was for my sister. Then came the weight comments. Margot pulled me aside one afternoon and told me I needed to lose at least 15 pounds before the wedding. She said she did not want me to look puffy in the photographs. She said it would ruin the aesthetic she was going for. I stood there stunned while she outlined a diet plan she thought I should follow. I designed the wedding invitations myself, spending hours on the layout, the fonts, the paper choices. I thought they were beautiful, elegant, and personal. Margot took one look at them and said they were not good enough. Too homemade, she said. Too amateur. She hired a professional designer instead, someone who charged 3 times what I would have charged, and she never mentioned my work again. The first real sign that something was deeply wrong came at a dress fitting. Margot had invited her 3 best friends, all bridesmaids, all women I barely knew. We were in a fancy bridal boutique surrounded by mirrors and champagne flutes, and Margot was holding court like a queen. I was standing off to the side, adjusting my dress, when I heard Margot say to her friends, "Thalia has always been the plain one in the family. Good thing she is standing behind me in the photos." Her friends laughed, all of them laughing at me like I was a joke. Margot caught my eye in the mirror and gave me a little smile, like she was daring me to say something. I did not say anything. I smiled back, pretended I had not heard, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I stood in a stall and fought back tears for 10 minutes. That night, I called my mother. I told her what happened, hoping for some comfort, some validation that I was not crazy for feeling hurt. Instead, she sighed and said, "Thalia, you are too sensitive. Margot was just joking around. You know how she is. Please do not ruin her wedding with your drama." I hung up the phone, feeling more alone than I had in years. I started to wonder if they were right. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. Maybe the problem was me. The bachelorette party almost broke me. Margot wanted a weekend getaway, 3 days at a spa resort, 2 hours outside the city. As maid of honor, it was my job to organize everything. I booked the hotel, arranged transportation, planned activities, ordered custom decorations, coordinated meals, and managed the guest list of 12 women, most of whom I had never met before. The total cost came to just under $2,000. I put it on my credit card, telling myself I would figure out how to pay it off later. This was for my sister. This was my duty. The weekend arrived, and everything went wrong from the start. Margot showed up an hour late, breezing in like she owned the place, which I suppose she thought she did. She took one look at the suite I had reserved and wrinkled her nose. "This is smaller than I expected," she said. "My friend Jennifer's bachelorette was at a 5-star resort in Napa. This feels a little budget." Budget? I had spent $2,000 of my own money, and she called it budget. The rest of the weekend continued in the same vein. Margot criticized the restaurant I chose for dinner. She complained about the spa treatments I booked. She spent most of her time with her other friends huddled in groups that did not include me, laughing at jokes I was not part of. On the last night, there was a toast. Each bridesmaid stood up to say something nice about Margot, to wish her well, to celebrate her upcoming marriage. When it was over, Margot made a speech of her own. She thanked everyone by name, talked about how much each friend meant to her, shared inside jokes and memories. She did not mention me once, not once. I had planned the entire weekend, paid for most of it, and she did not even acknowledge I existed. Later that night, she posted photos on social media. The caption read, "Best bachelorette ever, thanks to my amazing friends." The photos showed her laughing with her bridesmaids, posing with champagne, looking like she was having the time of her life. I was in exactly 0 of the pictures. I went to bed that night telling myself it would all be over soon. Just a few more weeks, and the wedding would be done. I could go back to my normal life, put some distance between myself and my sister, start healing from wounds I was only beginning to understand. The rehearsal dinner was 3 days before the wedding. It was held at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths and waiters in black vests. Both families were there, along with the wedding party and a few close friends. Our father stood up to give a toast. He talked about Margot for 10 minutes straight. He called her his shining star, his greatest achievement, the daughter who had made all his dreams come true. He talked about her grades, her career, her beauty, her charm. He talked about how proud he was to call her his daughter. He did not mention me at all, not even to acknowledge that I was the maid of honor, not even to thank me for everything I had done. Our mother gave a toast too. Hers was shorter, but equally focused on Margot. She talked about what a perfect bride Margot would be, what a perfect wife she would make. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin and said this was the happiest day of her life. I sat there smiling, clapping, when everyone else clapped, feeling like a ghost at my own family's celebration. Derek was seated across from me, and at one point during the dinner, our eyes met. He gave me a small nod, almost imperceptible, like he understood something that no one else in the room could see. The night before the wedding, I stayed in the bridal suite with Margot. It was tradition, she said, for the maid of honor to be there. But there was nothing sisterly about that night. Margot spent hours on the phone with her friends talking about the wedding, about Derek, about her future. She tried on her veil 6 times. She practiced her vows in front of the mirror. I sat on the other bed working on my maid of honor speech. I had written and rewritten it dozens of times, trying to find the perfect words. I wanted to honor my sister, to show her that despite everything, I still loved her. I talked about our childhood, about playing together in the backyard, about the time she taught me to ride a bike. I talked about how I admired her strength and ambition. I wished her and Derek a lifetime of happiness. When I finished the final draft, I asked Margot if she wanted to hear it. She barely looked up from her phone. "Just do not embarrass me tomorrow," she said. "Keep it short and sweet." I put my speech away and turned off my light. In the darkness, I could hear Margot still talking to someone, laughing softly, completely unaware of the hurt she caused so casually. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early. Margot was still asleep, so I quietly prepared everything she would need. I laid out her robe, her slippers, her makeup bag. I ordered room service for breakfast. I steamed the wrinkles out of her veil. When she finally woke up, she did not thank me. She just started issuing orders. Get her coffee. Find her phone charger. Tell the makeup artist to come early. Call the florist and confirm the bouquets. I did everything she asked, moving through the morning like a machine. The other bridesmaids arrived around 10, filling the suite with chatter and excitement. The makeup artist came, then the hairstylist. Margot sat in the center of it all, like a queen on her throne, being pampered and praised. I did my own makeup in the bathroom using the small mirror above the sink. I styled my own hair, pinning it up in a simple twist. No one offered to help. No one even noticed. Our mother arrived just before noon. She swept into the room, eyes only for Margot, arms open for an embrace. "You look absolutely stunning," she said, cupping Margot's face in her hands. "My perfect daughter, my beautiful bride." She did not look at me, did not say hello, did not acknowledge that I was standing 3 feet away wearing the bridesmaid dress I had paid $500 for, ready to support my sister on her special day. I took a breath and reminded myself that this was not about me. This was Margot's day. I just had to get through it. The church was beautiful. It was an old stone building on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a storybook. Margot had chosen it because she wanted her wedding to look like something out of a magazine, and she had succeeded. White roses lined the pews, candles flickered in every alcove. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the stone floor. 120 guests filled the church. Family members, friends, colleagues, society acquaintances. Everyone was dressed in their finest, speaking in hushed, reverent tones as they waited for the ceremony to begin. I stood at the front of the church with the other bridesmaids clutching my bouquet, watching the doors at the back. The music started, and one by one the bridal party made their entrance. And then, finally, Margot appeared. She looked stunning. There was no denying it. Her dress was a cascade of white silk, and lace fitted perfectly to her frame. Her hair was swept up in an elegant arrangement, diamonds sparkling at her ears and throat. She walked down the aisle on our father's arm, smiling radiantly, every inch the perfect bride. I watched Derek's face as she approached. He smiled when he saw her, took her hand when she reached the altar. But there was something in his expression I could not quite read. A tension around his eyes, a tightness in his jaw. I wondered if he was just nervous. Wedding day jitters, nothing more. The ceremony was beautiful. They exchanged vows, exchanged rings, exchanged a kiss that made the audience sigh with romantic satisfaction. I stood behind Margot the whole time, holding her bouquet when she needed her hands free, handing her a tissue when she pretended to cry. I played my part perfectly. After the ceremony, we gathered outside for photographs. The photographer was a serious man with expensive equipment and strong opinions about lighting. He arranged us in various configurations, barking orders like a drill sergeant. Margot controlled the process completely. She told me to stand further back, to angle my body to the side to make sure I was not blocking anyone more important. When the photographer wanted to take a candid shot of just the two of us sisters together on the wedding day, Margot waved him off. "We do not have time for that," she said. "We need to get to the reception." Our mother appeared beside us, fussing with Margot's train. She glanced at me and frowned. "Thalia's suck in your stomach," she said. "You look bigger in photos." Our father laughed, nodding in agreement. I felt my face flush with humiliation, but I did as she asked. I sucked in my stomach, smiled my fake smile, and posed for picture after picture while feeling smaller and smaller inside. Derek was standing nearby watching. He stepped forward and suggested we take some natural, relaxed shots, something less posed. Margot dismissed the idea immediately, and Derek did not push back. But I saw him looking at me, and for a moment I felt like someone in this whole circus actually saw me. The reception was held at a grand hotel downtown, the kind of place with crystal chandeliers and gold leaf ceiling. $500 a plate, I had heard someone say. Everything was perfect, from the flowers to the linens to the live orchestra playing softly in the corner. I rode to the reception in a limousine with the other bridesmaids. They chatted excitedly among themselves, sharing gossip and inside jokes that I was not part of. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by, thinking about my speech. I had practiced it so many times. I knew every word by heart. I had poured my whole heart into those words, hoping that somehow they would bridge the gap between my sister and me, hoping that she would hear my love and feel it, hoping that this day would be a turning point. I had no idea what was actually coming. The reception was in full swing when the MC announced that it was time for the maid of honor speech. I stood up from my seat at the head table, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. 120 faces turned toward me, waiting. I picked up the microphone with trembling hands. I looked out at the crowd, at my parents sitting in the front row, at Derek beside Margot, at all these people who had gathered to celebrate. I began to speak. I talked about growing up with Margot, about the summers we spent at our grandmother's house by the lake. I talked about how she taught me to swim, how she braided my hair before school, how she stood up for me once when a boy in our neighborhood called me names. I talked about admiring her strength, her determination, her ability to go after what she wanted. My voice shook a little as I spoke about her finding love with Derek. I said I could see how happy he made her, how he looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. I wished them a lifetime of laughter, of support, of growing old together. To Margot and Derek, I finished raising my glass. May your love story be as beautiful as this day. The guests applauded. I saw a few people wiping their eyes. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had done it. I had given my sister a beautiful tribute on her wedding day. I sat back down, my hands still shaking, my heart still racing. For one brief moment, I felt proud of myself. And then Margot stood up. She took the microphone from the MC, smiling, that brilliant smile that had charmed everyone her entire life. She said she wanted to respond to her little sister's speech, to add a few things that I had left out. I felt my stomach drop. That was really sweet, Thalia. She began, her voice dripping with false warmth. But let me tell everyone some things my little sister conveniently forgot to mention. The room went quiet. I saw a few guests exchange glances, sensing that something was off. Margot launched into a story about when we were children. She told everyone about a time I had spilled grape juice on her brand new white dress right before her 8th grade dance. She said I had done it on purpose because I was jealous. She called it sabotage. I remembered that day. I was 9 years old. It was an accident. I had apologized for weeks. But in Margot's version, I was a villain, a jealous little sister, trying to ruin her moment. She kept going. She talked about how I had always been envious of her, how I could never measure up to her achievements, how I had spent my whole life wanting what she had. Her voice was light joking, but the words were poison. And then she did something I never could have imagined. She signaled to someone at the back of the room, and suddenly an image appeared on the large screen behind her. It was a photograph of me from when I was 14 years old. My face was covered in acne. My hair was frizzy and unkempt. I was wearing braces and an oversized shirt that did nothing for my awkward teenage body. "This is the real Thalia," Margot announced to the crowd, "the one she tries so hard to hide. I just thought everyone should see who she really is." The room erupted in laughter. Not everyone, but enough. Enough people thought it was funny, thought it was just playful, sisterly teasing. I heard my father's loud guffaw from the front row. I saw my mother covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking with laughter. My own parents, laughing at my humiliation. Margot was not finished. She leaned into the microphone, her smile sharp as glass. "Thalia has always been jealous of everything I have. My looks, my career, my life, probably even my fiancé. I would not be surprised if she had a little crush on Derek herself." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I could not breathe. I could not move. I could not believe this was happening. I looked around the room, searching for one sympathetic face, one person who understood the cruelty of what was happening. But all I saw was amusement, pity, and worst of all, my parents still laughing like this was the funniest thing they had ever seen. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I started to stand, to run, to escape this nightmare. And then Derek moved. Everything happened so fast. One moment, Margot was speaking into the microphone, still riding the wave of laughter from the crowd. The next moment, Derek was on his feet, crossing the space between them with long, purposeful strides. He reached for the microphone, and Margot actually tried to hold onto it, her smile faltering for the first time. But Derek was stronger, and he took it from her hands with a gentle but firm grip. The room fell silent, completely, utterly silent. 120 people holding their breath, unsure what was about to happen. Derek stood at the center of the dance floor, the microphone in his hand, his face set in an expression I had never seen before. He looked calm on the surface, but there was steel underneath, a resolve that commanded attention. "That is enough, Margot," he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. Margot's face went pale. "What are you doing?" "This is our wedding." Derek did not answer her. Instead, he turned to face the guests, his eyes sweeping across the crowd before landing on me. He held my gaze for a long moment, And in that moment, I felt like he was seeing everything I had hidden for so many years. "I have been silent for too long," he began. I told myself that things would change after we got married, that Margot would soften, that her family would become my family, that I could make this work through patience and love. But I cannot stand here and watch this anymore. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Margot took a step toward Derek, her hand outstretched, but he stepped away from her. "In the 2 years I have known Margot," Derek continued, "I have seen things that troubled me. I made excuses for them. I told myself I was being too judgmental, that every family has its quirks. But tonight I finally understand that what I was seeing was not quirks. It was cruelty." He took a breath, and I realized my hands were shaking. I have heard Margot talk about Thalia behind her back more times than I can count. She called her an embarrassment. She called her the ugly duckling of the family. She laughed about how their parents always loved her more, like it was a point of pride. Gasps echoed through the room. I saw my mother's face go white. "I watched Thalia work tirelessly for this wedding," Derek continued. "She planned the bachelorette party and paid for most of it out of her own pocket. She designed invitations that Margot rejected without a second thought. She bought a $500 dress because Margot demanded it. She did everything asked of her with grace and patience, and this is how she is repaid, with public humiliation, with her worst photos displayed for a crowd to mock." Derek's voice rose not to a shout, but to something more powerful, a controlled intensity that held everyone captive. "And you," he said, turning to look directly at my parents, "you are her parents, her mother and father, and when your daughter was being humiliated in front of 120 people, you laughed. You laughed like it was entertainment. What kind of parents do that?" My father's face turned red. My mother looked like she was about to cry. Neither of them said a word. Derek turned back to Margot, who was standing frozen, her perfect composure finally cracked. "I thought I could change you," he said, his voice softer now, but no less devastating. "I thought that if I loved you enough, you would become the person I wanted you to be. But I was wrong. You showed me tonight exactly who you are, and I cannot pretend I did not see it." He reached down and pulled the wedding ring from his finger, the ring that had been placed there less than 3 hours ago. The gold gleamed under the chandeliers as he held it up for everyone to see. "I cannot marry someone who treats her own family like this," Derek said. "If this is how you treat your sister, how will you treat our children? How will you treat me when I am no longer useful to you?" Margot finally found her voice. "You cannot do this, not in front of everyone." Derek's expression did not change. "You just humiliated your sister in front of everyone. Now you understand how it feels." He set the ring down on the nearest table with a soft click that somehow echoed through the silent room. Then he turned and walked toward me. I was still sitting in my chair, frozen, unable to process what was happening. Derek stopped in front of me and bent down slightly so we were at eye level. "I am sorry you had to go through this," he said, his voice gentle. "You deserve so much better than what they have given you. Your family does not define your worth. Please remember that." Tears were streaming down my face. I tried to speak, to thank him, to say something, but no words came out. Derek straightened up. "Walk out of here with your head held high. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing." He gave me one last nod, then turned and walked out of the ballroom. The doors swung shut behind him, and for a moment no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Margot started screaming a high-pitched wail that shattered the stunned silence. My parents rushed after Derek, calling his name, begging him to come back. Guests rose from their seats, talking over each other, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. But I did not move. I sat there in my chair, tears falling, my whole body trembling. Something had shifted inside me, something fundamental. For the first time in my life, someone had stood up for me. Someone had seen the truth and spoken it out loud. After what felt like an eternity, I wiped my eyes. I looked around the room at the chaos, at Margot sobbing in the corner, at my parents nowhere to be seen, at the guests who were staring at me with a mix of sympathy and fascination. I stood up slowly. I smoothed down my dress. I lifted my chin. And then I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high, just like Derek had told me to do. I did not run. I did not hide my face. I walked with dignity, with purpose, with something new burning in my chest. It felt like freedom. The days after the wedding were the hardest of my life. I went back to my apartment and locked the door behind me. I turned off my phone and closed all the blinds. I crawled into bed and stayed there for 2 days, crying until I had no tears left, sleeping in fitful bursts, waking up each time to the same crushing reality. My family. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. They had laughed while I was being destroyed. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 47 missed calls. Most of them were from my parents, but there were also calls from Margot from relatives I barely spoke to from numbers I did not recognize. My voicemail was full. I listened to a few of the messages. My mother was crying, but not about what had happened to me. She was crying about the embarrassment, about what people would think about how Margot's life was ruined now because Derek had left her at the reception. Not one word of apology for laughing at me. Not one acknowledgement of what Margot had done. My father's message was angrier. He demanded to know what I had done to make Derek leave. He said I must have put ideas in Derek's head, must have poisoned him against Margot somehow. He said I had ruined the family's reputation. Margot's messages were the worst. She screamed at me, blamed me for everything, called me names I will not repeat. She said if I had just kept my mouth shut, if I had just accepted my place, none of this would have happened. I deleted every message without responding. For a week, I did not speak to anyone in my family. They kept calling, kept texting, kept demanding that I answer, but I had nothing to say to them. What could I possibly say? On the 8th day, I sat down and wrote a letter. It was the hardest thing I have ever written. I told my parents and my sister that I needed time away from them. I told them that I loved them, but that their behavior at the wedding had shown me something I could no longer ignore. I told them that until they were ready to genuinely apologize, to acknowledge what they had done, and take responsibility for it, I would not be in contact with them. I mailed the letter. Then I blocked their phone numbers, their email addresses, their social media accounts. I cut every cord that connected me to them. It felt like losing a limb. It felt like dying. But it also felt like the first breath of clean air after years of suffocating. The first few months were brutal. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office, doing anything to keep my mind occupied. But the grief found me anyway in the quiet moments in the middle of the night, in the space between sleeping and waking. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that what I had experienced was not normal, that the favoritism and the cruelty and the dismissal of my feelings were forms of emotional abuse. She helped me see that I was not too sensitive, that my pain was valid, that I deserved better. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected. I made new ones. My colleague Harper became my closest confidant, a woman with a warm laugh and a generous heart, who reminded me what real friendship felt like. She did not judge me for my family situation. She just listened and supported me and showed up when I needed her. I started doing things I loved again. I painted on weekends. I went to art galleries. I redecorated my apartment, turning it into a space that felt entirely my own. I adopted a cat, a gray tabby named Winston, who curled up on my lap while I read and made me feel less alone. 6 months after the wedding, I received a letter from Derek. I do not know how he got my address, but there it was in my mailbox, a simple white envelope with my name written in neat handwriting. He apologized for the chaos his actions had caused. He said he did not regret what he did, but he regretted that I had been caught in the middle of it. He said he had seen the way Margot's family treated me from the very beginning, and he had struggled with whether to say anything. In the end, he said he simply could not stay silent anymore. He wished me well. He said he hoped I would find the happiness I deserved. I wrote him back thanking him for standing up for me, for seeing me when no one else did. I told him that his words at the wedding had given me the courage to finally break free from a family that had been hurting me my whole life. I told him I would always be grateful. We exchanged a few more letters after that, friendly, but not intimate. He was rebuilding his own life, processing his own grief over the marriage that never was. We were both survivors of the same storm, connected by that one extraordinary night, but destined to walk our own separate paths. Through distant relatives who still spoke to me, I learned what happened to Margot after the wedding. The public humiliation had been devastating. The story spread through their social circles like wildfire, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Margot's carefully cultivated image was shattered. Some of her clients at the law firm quietly took their business elsewhere. Her friends, the ones who had laughed at me at the bachelorette party, slowly distanced themselves. My parents closed ranks around her, of course. They blamed Derek. They blamed me. They blamed everyone except their precious daughter. From what I heard, they were still insisting that Margot had done nothing wrong, that she was the victim, that everyone else had conspired against her. I did not take joy in any of this. I did not feel satisfaction or vindication. I just felt a profound sense of distance, like I was watching a movie about people I used to know. They were no longer my problem. They were no longer my responsibility. They were no longer my family. A year after the wedding, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment looking out at the Minneapolis skyline. It was a bigger place in a better neighborhood, a reflection of the promotion I had received at work. I had earned it through talent and hard work, not through anyone's favor or pity. I thought about everything I had been through, the years of feeling invisible, the constant comparisons, the wedding that should have destroyed me but instead set me free. I had learned so much in that year. I learned that family is not just about blood. It is about the people who show up for you, who see you for who you really are, who love you without conditions or expectations. I learned that walking away from toxic relationships is not giving up. It is saving yourself. I learned that the people who are supposed to love you the most can sometimes hurt you the deepest, and that their failure to love you properly says everything about them and nothing about your worth. I learned that healing is not linear. Some days I still felt the old wounds ache. Some nights I still cried for the family I wished I had, the parents who should have protected me, the sister who should have been my best friend. But those days grew fewer and further between, and the good days grew stronger. I built a new family for myself. Harper and her husband became like siblings to me. My therapist became a trusted guide. My colleagues became friends. My cat became my constant companion. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. And I found peace, real peace, the kind that comes from finally accepting yourself, from finally knowing your own value, from finally understanding that you do not need anyone else's approval to be complete. Standing on that balcony watching the sunset over the city, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt free. So here I am sharing my story with you. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my experience, if you have family members who make you feel small, who dismiss your feelings, who favor your siblings, who laugh at your pain, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for feeling hurt. The people who are supposed to love us do not always know how to do it right. Sometimes they are broken in ways they cannot see. Sometimes they are cruel without understanding the damage they cause. And sometimes, no matter how hard we try, we cannot make them love us the way we deserve to be loved. But that does not mean we are unlovable. It means we need to find our love elsewhere. It means we need to build our own families, choose our own people, create our own safe spaces. It means we need to walk away with our heads held high, knowing that we did nothing wrong, knowing that we deserve better, knowing that somewhere out there are people who will see us and value us and love us exactly as we are. That is the lesson my sister's wedding taught me. And as painful as it was to learn, I would not trade it for anything. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar with your family? Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? Share your story in the comments below. You might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, yet hit that subscribe button so you do not miss more stories like this one. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you all the love you deserve, the family you choose, and the freedom to be exactly who you are. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
The favoritism started early and never stopped. When Margot graduated from college, our parents bought her a brand new car, a silver sedan with leather seats and all the upgrades. When I graduated 2 years later, I got a card with $50 inside and a reminder that I needed to start paying rent if I was going to keep living at home. I saved for 3 years to buy my own car, a used compact with over 80,000 miles on it. I was proud of that car because I earned it myself. Margot knew she was the favorite and she used it. She would make little comments in front of our parents, subtle jabs that sounded like jokes but cut like knives. She would say things like, Thalia is the artsy one, which is just a nice way of saying she could not handle real academics. Our parents would laugh and I would force myself to laugh along, because what else could I do? But here's the thing. Despite everything, I loved my sister. I looked up to her in so many ways. I told myself that the teasing was just sibling rivalry, that deep down she loved me too. I made excuses for her behavior year after year. I told myself that when we got older, when we were both adults with our own lives, things would be different. The competition would fade. We would become friends. Real friends the way sisters are supposed to be. I held on to that hope for a long time. I held on to it even when the evidence kept piling up that maybe I was wrong. 2 years before the wedding, Margot met Derek at a charity gala downtown. She came home that night glowing in a way I had never seen before. Derek was 34, a surgeon at one of the best hospitals in the region. He came from a wealthy family, old money. The kind that owns lakefront property and has buildings named after them. Our parents were thrilled a surgeon from a good family. This was exactly the kind of match they had always dreamed of for their perfect daughter. They talked about Derek constantly, about his career, his family's connections, his future. It was like Margot had won the lottery, and by extension, so had they. I only met Derek a handful of times over those 2 years. He would come to family dinners occasionally. Always polite, always well-dressed. He did not talk much, which I found strange for someone in his position. He seemed to observe more than participate, watching the dynamics at our table with quiet attention. I remember catching his eye once when Margot made one of her usual comments about me. He did not laugh like everyone else. He just looked at me for a moment, his expression unreadable before turning back to his meal. I did not think much of it at the time. I figured he was just reserved, maybe a little shy despite his success. I had no idea that he was paying attention to everything, storing it all away, waiting. The announcement came at a Sunday dinner in early spring. Margot stood up from the table, Derek beside her, and declared that they were engaged. The ring on her finger was enormous, a diamond that caught the light and scattered it across the dining room walls. Our mother screamed with joy. She literally screamed, jumping up from her chair and throwing her arms around Margot. Our father was right behind her, shaking Derek's hand with both of his. His face split in the biggest smile I had seen in years. They were so happy, so proud, so completely focused on Margot that I might as well have been invisible. I stood up to my heart genuinely full of happiness for my sister. Whatever our differences, this was a big moment. I walked around the table to hug her to tell her congratulations, but when I wrapped my arms around her, she barely responded. Her body stayed stiff, and she patted my back twice, like she was humoring a child. "Thanks, Thalia," she said, already looking past me toward our parents. And then, just loud enough for everyone to hear, she added, "I hope you can actually be helpful this time." Unlike at my graduation party, the room went quiet for a second. My graduation party for her had been 5 years ago, and I had worked so hard to make it special. I had baked a cake from scratch, decorated the backyard, invited all her friends. But the cake had been slightly lopsided, and she had never let me forget it. Our parents laughed, brushing it off as Margot being Margot. Derek said nothing, but I noticed him watching me again, that same quiet observation in his eyes. A week later, Margot asked me to be her maid of honor. We were at a coffee shop, just the two of us, which was rare. She said she wanted me by her side on the most important day of her life. She said it would mean so much to her. I was touched, genuinely deeply touched. I thought this was the turning point I had been waiting for. This was my sister reaching out, choosing me, valuing me. I said yes immediately without hesitation. I promised I would do everything in my power to make her wedding perfect. She smiled and said, "Good. I will send you the list of everything you need to do." The list arrived the next day. It was 4 pages long. Over the following months, I learned that being Margot's maid of honor meant being her unpaid wedding planner, personal assistant, and emotional punching bag, all rolled into one. She wanted me to coordinate with vendors, manage the bridesmaids' handle, last-minute emergencies, and do it all with a smile. The bridesmaid dresses were the first problem. Margot chose a designer gown that cost $500. She did not offer to help pay, did not even consider that this might be a lot of money for some of us. I pulled the cash from my savings account money I had been setting aside for a vacation I had been dreaming about for years. I told myself it was worth it. This was for my sister. Then came the weight comments. Margot pulled me aside one afternoon and told me I needed to lose at least 15 pounds before the wedding. She said she did not want me to look puffy in the photographs. She said it would ruin the aesthetic she was going for. I stood there stunned. While she outlined a diet plan she thought I should follow, I designed the wedding invitations myself, spending hours on the layout, the fonts, the paper choices. I thought they were beautiful, elegant, and personal. Margot took one look at them and said they were not good enough. To homemade, she said. To amateur. She hired a professional designer instead, someone who charged 3 times what I would have charged. And she never mentioned my work again. The first real sign that something was deeply wrong came at a dress fitting. Margot had invited her 3 best friends, all bridesmaids, all women I barely knew. We were in a fancy bridal boutique surrounded by mirrors and champagne flutes, and Margot was holding court like a queen. I was standing off to the side adjusting my dress when I heard Margot say to her friends, "Thalia has always been the plain one in the family. Good thing she is standing behind me in the photos." Her friends laughed, all of them laughing at me like I was a joke. Margot caught my eye in the mirror and gave me a little smile like she was daring me to say something. I did not say anything. I smiled back, pretended I had not heard, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I stood in a stall and fought back tears for 10 minutes. That night, I called my mother. I told her what happened, hoping for some comfort, some validation that I was not crazy for feeling hurt. Instead, she sighed and said, "Thalia, you are too sensitive. Margot was just joking around. You know how she is. Please do not ruin her wedding with your drama." I hung up the phone feeling more alone than I had in years. I started to wonder if they were right. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. Maybe the problem was me. The bachelorette party almost broke me. Margot wanted a weekend getaway, 3 days at a spa resort 2 hours outside the city. As maid of honor, it was my job to organize everything. I booked the hotel, arranged transportation, planned activities, ordered custom decorations, coordinated meals, and managed the guest list of 12 women, most of whom I had never met before. The total cost came to just under $2,000. I put it on my credit card, telling myself I would figure out how to pay it off later. This was for my sister. This was my duty. The weekend arrived and everything went wrong from the start. Margot showed up an hour late, breezing in like she owned the place, which I suppose she thought she did. She took one look at the suite I had reserved and wrinkled her nose. "This is smaller than I expected," she said. "My friend Jennifer's bachelorette was at a 5-star resort in Napa. This feels a little budget." Budget. I had spent $2,000 of my own money, and she called it budget. The rest of the weekend continued in the same vein. Margot criticized the restaurant I chose for dinner. She complained about the spa treatments I booked. She spent most of her time with her other friends, huddled in groups that did not include me, laughing at jokes I was not part of. On the last night, there was a toast. Each bridesmaid stood up to say something nice about Margot, to wish her well, to celebrate her upcoming marriage. When it was over, Margot made a speech of her own. She thanked everyone by name, talked about how much each friend meant to her, shared inside jokes and memories. She did not mention me once, not once. I had planned the entire weekend, paid for most of it, and she did not even acknowledge I existed. Later that night, she posted photos on social media. The caption read, "Best bachelorette ever thanks to my amazing friends." The photo showed her laughing with her bridesmaids, posing with champagne, looking like she was having the time of her life. I was in exactly 0 of the pictures. I went to bed that night telling myself it would all be over soon, just a few more weeks, and the wedding would be done. I could go back to my normal life, put some distance between myself and my sister, start healing from wounds I was only beginning to understand. The rehearsal dinner was 3 days before the wedding. It was held at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths and waiters in black vests. Both families were there along with the wedding party and a few close friends. Our father stood up to give a toast. He talked about Margot for 10 minutes straight. He called her his shining star, his greatest achievement, the daughter who had made all his dreams come true. He talked about her grades, her career, her beauty, her charm. He talked about how proud he was to call her his daughter. He did not mention me at all, not even to acknowledge that I was the maid of honor. Not even to thank me for everything I had done. Our mother gave a toast too. Hers was shorter but equally focused on Margot. She talked about what a perfect bride Margot would be. What a perfect wife she would make. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin and said this was the happiest day of her life. I sat there smiling, clapping. When everyone else clapped, feeling like a ghost at my own family's celebration, Derek was seated across from me, and at one point during the dinner, our eyes met. He gave me a small nod, almost imperceptible, like he understood something that no one else in the room could see. The night before the wedding, I stayed in the bridal suite with Margot. It was tradition, she said, for the maid of honor to be there, but there was nothing sisterly about that night. Margot spent hours on the phone with her friends talking about the wedding, about Derek, about her future. She tried on her veil 6 times. She practiced her vows in front of the mirror. I sat on the other bed working on my maid of honor speech. I had written and rewritten it dozens of times, trying to find the perfect words. I wanted to honor my sister, to show her that, despite everything, I still loved her. I talked about our childhood, about playing together in the backyard, about the time she taught me to ride a bike. I talked about how I admired her strength and ambition. I wished her and Derek a lifetime of happiness. When I finished the final draft, I asked Margot if she wanted to hear it. She barely looked up from her phone. "Just do not embarrass me tomorrow," she said. "Keep it short and sweet." I put my speech away and turned off my light. In the darkness, I could hear Margot still talking to someone, laughing softly, completely unaware of the hurt she caused so casually. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early. Margot was still asleep, so I quietly prepared everything she would need. I laid out her robe, her slippers, her makeup bag. I ordered room service for breakfast. I steamed the wrinkles out of her veil. When she finally woke up, she did not thank me. She just started issuing orders. Get her coffee. Find her phone charger. Tell the makeup artist to come early. Call the florist and confirm the bouquets. I did everything she asked, moving through the morning like a machine. The other bridesmaids arrived around 10, filling the suite with chatter and excitement. The makeup artist came, then the hairstylist. Margot sat in the center of it all, like a queen on her throne, being pampered and praised. I did my own makeup in the bathroom using the small mirror above the sink. I styled my own hair, pinning it up in a simple twist. No one offered to help. No one even noticed. Our mother arrived just before noon. She swept into the room, eyes only, for Margot, arms open for an embrace. "You look absolutely stunning," she said, cupping Margot's face in her hands. "My perfect daughter, my beautiful bride." She did not look at me, did not say hello, did not acknowledge that I was standing 3 feet away, wearing the bridesmaid dress. I had paid $500 for ready to support my sister on her special day. I took a breath and reminded myself that this was not about me. This was Margot's day. I just had to get through it. The church was beautiful. It was an old stone building on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a storybook. Margot had chosen it because she wanted her wedding to look like something out of a magazine, and she had succeeded. White roses lined the pews, candles flickered in every alcove, sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the stone floor. 120 guests filled the church. Family members, friends, colleagues, society acquaintances. Everyone was dressed in their finest, speaking in hushed, reverent tones. As they waited for the ceremony to begin, I stood at the front of the church with the other bridesmaids clutching my bouquet. Watching the doors at the back, the music started, and one by one the bridal party made their entrance. And then finally Margot appeared. She looked stunning. There was no denying it. Her dress was a cascade of white silk and lace fitted perfectly to her frame. Her hair was swept up in an elegant arrangement diamonds, sparkling at her ears and throat. She walked down the aisle on our father's arm, smiling radiantly, every inch the perfect bride. I watched Derek's face as she approached. He smiled when he saw her, took her hand when she reached the altar. But there was something in his expression I could not quite read. A tension around his eyes, a tightness in his jaw. I wondered if he was just nervous. Wedding day, jitters, nothing more. The ceremony was beautiful. They exchanged vows, exchanged rings, exchanged a kiss that made the audience sigh with romantic satisfaction. I stood behind Margot the whole time, holding her bouquet. When she needed her hands free, handing her a tissue when she pretended to cry. I played my part perfectly. After the ceremony, we gathered outside for photographs. The photographer was a serious man with expensive equipment and strong opinions about lighting. He arranged us in various configurations, barking orders like a drill sergeant. Margot controlled the process completely. She told me to stand further back to angle my body to the side, to make sure I was not blocking anyone more important. When the photographer wanted to take a candid shot of just the two of us sisters, together on the wedding day, Margot waved him off. "We do not have time for that," she said. "We need to get to the reception." Our mother appeared beside us, fussing with Margot's train. She glanced at me and frowned. "Thalia sucked in your stomach," she said. "You look bigger in photos." Our father laughed, nodding in agreement. I felt my face flush with humiliation, but I did as she asked. I sucked in my stomach, smiled my fake smile, and posed for picture after picture, while feeling smaller and smaller inside. Derek was standing nearby watching. He stepped forward and suggested we take some natural, relaxed shots, something less posed. Margot dismissed the idea immediately, and Derek did not push back. But I saw him looking at me, and for a moment I felt like someone in this whole circus actually saw me. The reception was held at a grand hotel downtown, the kind of place with crystal chandeliers and gold leaf ceiling. $500 a plate, I had heard someone say. Everything was perfect, from the flowers to the linens, to the live orchestra playing softly in the corner. I rode to the reception in a limousine with the other bridesmaids. They chatted excitedly among themselves, sharing gossip and inside jokes that I was not part of. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by, thinking about my speech. I had practiced it so many times. I knew every word by heart. I had poured my whole heart into those words, hoping that somehow they would bridge the gap between my sister and me, hoping that she would hear my love and feel it, hoping that this day would be a turning point. I had no idea what was actually coming. The reception was in full swing when the MC announced that it was time for the Maid of Honor speech. I stood up from my seat at the head table, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. 120 faces turned toward me, waiting. I picked up the microphone with trembling hands. I looked out at the crowd, at my parents sitting in the front row, at Derek beside Margot, at all these people who had gathered to celebrate. I began to speak. I talked about growing up with Margot, about the summers we spend at our grandmother's house by the lake. I talked about how she taught me to swim, how she braided my hair before school, how she stood up for me once when a boy in our neighborhood called me names. I talked about admiring her strength, her determination, her ability to go after what she wanted. My voice shook a little as I spoke about her finding love with Derek. I said I could see how happy he made her, how he looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. I wished them a lifetime of laughter, of support, of growing old together. To Margot and Derek, I finished raising my glass. May your love story be as beautiful as this day. The guests applauded. I saw a few people wiping their eyes. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had done it. I had given my sister a beautiful tribute on her wedding day. I sat back down, my hands, still shaking, my heart still racing. For one brief moment, I felt proud of myself. And then Margot stood up. She took the microphone from the MC, smiling, that brilliant smile that had charmed everyone her entire life. She said she wanted to respond to her little sister's speech, to add a few things that I had left out. I felt my stomach drop. That was really sweet, Talia. She began, her voice dripping with false warmth. But let me tell everyone some things my little sister conveniently forgot to mention. The room went quiet. I saw a few guests exchange glances, sensing that something was off. Margot launched into a story about when we were children. She told everyone about a time I had spilled grape juice on her brand new white dress, right before her 8th grade dance. She said I had done it on purpose because I was jealous. She called it sabotage. I remembered that day. I was 9 years old. It was an accident. I had apologized for weeks, but in Margot's version, I was a villain, a jealous little sister, trying to ruin her moment. She kept going. She talked about how I had always been envious of her, how I could never measure up to her achievements, how I had spent my whole life wanting what she had. Her voice was light joking, but the words were poison. And then she did something I never could have imagined. She signaled to someone at the back of the room, and suddenly an image appeared on the large screen behind her. It was a photograph of me from when I was 14 years old. My face was covered in acne. My hair was frizzy and unkempt. I was wearing braces and an oversized shirt that did nothing for my awkward teenage body. "This is the real Thalia," Margot announced to the crowd, "the one she tries so hard to hide. I just thought everyone should see who she really is, The room erupted in laughter, not everyone but enough. Enough people thought it was funny, thought it was just playful, sisterly teasing. I heard my father's loud guffaw from the front row. I saw my mother covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking with laughter. My own parents laughing at my humiliation. Margot was not finished. She leaned into the microphone, her smile sharp as glass. Thalia has always been jealous of everything I have. My looks, my career, my life. Probably even my fiancé. I would not be surprised if she had a little crush on Derek herself. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I could not breathe. I could not move. I could not believe this was happening. I looked around the room searching for one sympathetic face, one person who understood the cruelty of what was happening. But all I saw was amusement, pity, and worst of all, my parents still laughing like this was the funniest thing they had ever seen. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I started to stand to run to escape this nightmare. And then Derek moved. Everything happened so fast. One moment, Margot was speaking into the microphone, still riding the wave of laughter from the crowd. The next moment, Derek was on his feet, crossing the space between them with long, purposeful strides. He reached for the microphone and Margot actually tried to hold on to it, her smile faltering for the first time. But Derek was stronger and he took it from her hands with a gentle but firm grip. The room fell silent, completely, utterly silent. 120 people holding their breath, unsure what was about to happen. Derek stood at the center of the dance floor. The microphone in his hand, his face set in an expression I had never seen before. He looked calm on the surface, but there was steel underneath a resolve that commanded attention. "That is enough, Margot." He set his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. Margot's face went pale. "What are you doing? This is our wedding." Derek did not answer her. Instead, he turned to face the guests, his eyes sweeping across the crowd before landing on me. He held my gaze for a long moment. And in that moment, I felt like he was seeing everything I had hidden for so many years. "I have been silent for too long," he began. I told myself that things would change after we got married, that Margot would soften, that her family would become my family, that I could make this work through patience and love. But I cannot stand here and watch this anymore. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Margot took a step toward Derek, her hand outstretched, but he stepped away from her. "In the 2 years I have known Margot," Derek continued, "I have seen things that troubled me. I made excuses for them. I told myself I was being too judgmental, that every family has its quirks. But tonight I finally understand that what I was seeing was not quirks. It was cruelty." He took a breath and I realized my hands were shaking. I have heard Margot talk about Thalia behind her back more times than I can count. She called her an embarrassment. She called her the ugly duckling of the family. She laughed about how their parents always loved her more, like it was a point of pride. Gasps echoed through the room. I saw my mother's face go white. I watched Thalia work tirelessly for this wedding. Derek continued. She planned the bachelorette party and paid for most of it out of her own pocket. She designed invitations that Margot rejected without a second thought. She bought a $500 dress because Margot demanded it. She did everything asked of her with grace and patience. And this is how she is repaid with public humiliation, with her worst photos displayed for a crowd to mock. Derek's voice rose not to a shout, but to something more powerful, a controlled intensity that held everyone captive. "And you," he said, turning to look directly at my parents, "you are her parents, her mother and father. And when your daughter was being humiliated in front of 120 people, you laughed. You laughed like it was entertainment. What kind of parents do that?" My father's face turned red. My mother looked like she was about to cry. Neither of them said a word. Derek turned back to Margot, who was standing frozen, her perfect composure finally cracked. "I thought I could change you." He said, his voice softer now, but no less devastating. "I thought that if I loved you enough, you would become the person I wanted you to be. But I was wrong. You showed me tonight exactly who you are, and I cannot pretend I did not see it." He reached down and pulled the wedding ring from his finger, the ring that had been placed there less than 3 hours ago. The gold gleamed under the chandeliers as he held it up for everyone to see. "I cannot marry someone who treats her own family like this," Derek said. "If this is how you treat your sister, how will you treat our children? How will you treat me when I am no longer useful to you? Margot finally found her voice. You cannot do this, not in front of everyone. Derek's expression did not change. You just humiliated your sister in front of everyone. Now you understand how it feels. He set the ring down on the nearest table with a soft click that somehow echoed through the silent room. Then he turned and walked toward me. I was still sitting in my chair, frozen, unable to process what was happening. Derek stopped in front of me and bent down slightly, so we were at eye level. I am sorry you had to go through this, he said, his voice gentle. You deserve so much better than what they have given you. Your family does not define your worth. Please remember that. Tears were streaming down my face. I tried to speak, to thank him, to say something, but no words came out. Derek straightened up. Walk out of here with your head held high. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing. He gave me one last nod, then turned and walked out of the ballroom. The doors swung shut behind him, and for a moment no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Margot started screaming a high-pitched wail that shattered the stunned silence. My parents rushed after Derek, calling his name, begging him to come back. Guests rose from their seats, talking over each other, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. But I did not move. I sat there in my chair, tears falling, my whole body trembling. Something had shifted inside me, something fundamental. For the first time in my life, someone had stood up for me. Someone had seen the truth and spoken it out loud. After what felt like an eternity, I wiped my eyes. I looked around the room at the chaos, at Margot, sobbing in the corner, at my parents nowhere to be seen, at the guests who were staring at me. With a mix of sympathy and fascination, I stood up slowly. I smoothed down my dress. I lifted my chin, and then I walked out of that ballroom. With my head held high, just like Derek had told me to do. I did not run. I did not hide my face. I walked with dignity, with purpose, with something new burning in my chest. It felt like freedom. The days after the wedding were the hardest of my life. I went back to my apartment and locked the door behind me. I turned off my phone and closed all the blinds. I crawled into bed and stayed there for 2 days, crying until I had no tears left, sleeping in fitful bursts, waking up each time to the same crushing reality. My family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, they had laughed while I was being destroyed. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 47 missed calls. Most of them were from my parents, but there were also calls from Margot, from relatives I barely spoke to, from numbers I did not recognize. My voicemail was full. I listened to a few of the messages. My mother was crying, but not about what had happened to me. She was crying about the embarrassment, about what people would think, about how Margot's life was ruined now because Derek had left her at the reception. Not one word of apology for laughing at me, not one acknowledgement of what Margot had done. My father's message was angrier. He demanded to know what I had done to make Derek leave. He said I must have put ideas in Derek's head, must have poisoned him against Margot somehow. He said I had ruined the family's reputation. Margot's messages were the worst. She screamed at me, blamed me for everything, called me names I will not repeat. She said if I had just kept my mouth shut, if I had just accepted my place, none of this would have happened. I deleted every message without responding. For a week, I did not speak to anyone in my family. They kept calling, kept texting, kept demanding that I answer, but I had nothing to say to them. What could I possibly say? On the 8th day, I sat down and wrote a letter. It was the hardest thing I have ever written. I told my parents and my sister that I needed time away from them. I told them that I loved them, but that their behavior at the wedding had shown me something I could no longer ignore. I told them that until they were ready to genuinely apologize, to acknowledge what they had done, and take responsibility for it, I would not be in contact with them. I mailed the letter, then I blocked their phone numbers, their email addresses, their social media accounts. I cut every cord that connected me to them. It felt like losing a limb. It felt like dying. But it also felt like the first breath of clean air after years of suffocating. The first few months were brutal. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office, doing anything to keep my mind occupied. But the grief found me anyway, in the quiet moments in the middle of the night, in the space between sleeping and waking. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson. who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that what I had experienced was not normal, that the favoritism and the cruelty and the dismissal of my feelings were forms of emotional abuse. She helped me see that I was not too sensitive, that my pain was valid, that I deserved better. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't neglected. I made new ones. My colleague Harper became my closest confidant, a woman with a warm laugh and a generous heart, who reminded me what real friendship felt like. She did not judge me for my family's situation. She just listened and supported me, and showed up when I needed her. I started doing things I loved again. I painted on weekends. I went to art galleries. I redecorated my apartment, turning it into a space that felt entirely my own. I adopted a cat, a gray tabby named Winston, who curled up on my lap while I read and made me feel less alone. 6 months after the wedding, I received a letter from Derek. I do not know how he got my address, but there it was in my mailbox. A simple white envelope with my name written in neat handwriting. He apologized for the chaos his actions had caused. He said he did not regret what he did, but he regretted that I had been caught in the middle of it. He said he had seen the way Margot's family treated me from the very beginning, and he had struggled with whether to say anything. In the end, he said he simply could not stay silent anymore. He wished me well. He said he hoped I would find the happiness I deserved. I wrote him back, thanking him for standing up for me, for seeing me when no one else did. I told him that his words at the wedding had given me the courage to finally break free from a family that had been hurting me my whole life. I told him I would always be grateful. We exchanged a few more letters after that, friendly, but not intimate. He was rebuilding his own life, processing his own grief over the marriage that never was. We were both survivors of the same storm, connected by that one extraordinary night, but destined to walk our own separate paths. Through distant relatives who still spoke to me, I learned what happened to Margot after the wedding. The public humiliation had been devastating. The story spread through their social circles, like wildfire, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Margot's carefully cultivated image was shattered. Some of her clients at the law firm quietly took their business elsewhere. Her friends, the ones who had laughed at me at the bachelorette party, slowly distanced themselves. My parents closed ranks around her, of course. They blamed Derek. They blamed me. They blamed everyone except their precious daughter. From what I heard, they were still insisting that Margot had done nothing wrong, that she was the victim, that everyone else had conspired against her. I did not take joy in any of this. I did not feel satisfaction or vindication. I just felt a profound sense of distance, like I was watching a movie about people I used to know. They were no longer my problem. They were no longer my responsibility. They were no longer my family. A year after the wedding, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out at the Minneapolis skyline. It was a bigger place in a better neighborhood, a reflection of the promotion I had received at work. I had earned it through talent and hard work, not through anyone's favor or pity. I thought about everything I had been through, the years of feeling invisible, the constant comparisons, the wedding that should have destroyed me, but instead set me free. I had learned so much in that year. I learned that family is not just about blood. It is about the people who show up for you, who see you for who you really are, who love you without conditions or expectations. I learned that walking away from toxic relationships is not giving up. It is saving yourself. I learned that the people who are supposed to love you the most can sometimes hurt you the deepest, and that their failure to love you properly says everything about them and nothing about your worth. I learned that healing is not linear. Some days I still felt the old wounds ache. Some nights I still cried for the family I wished. I had the parents who should have protected me, the sister who should have been my best friend. But those days grew fewer and further between, and the good days grew stronger. I built a new family for myself. Harper and her husband became like siblings to me. My therapist became a trusted guide. My colleagues became friends. My cat became my constant companion. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up instead of tearing me down, and I found peace. Real peace, the kind that comes from finally accepting yourself, from finally knowing your own value, from finally understanding that you do not need anyone else's approval to be complete. Standing on that balcony watching the sunset over the city, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt free. So here I am sharing my story with you. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my experience, if you have family members who make you feel small, who dismiss your feelings, who favor your siblings, who laugh at your pain, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for feeling hurt. The people who are supposed to love us do not always know how to do it right. Sometimes they are broken in ways they cannot see. Sometimes they are cruel without understanding the damage they cause. And sometimes, no matter how hard we try, we cannot make them love us the way we deserve to be loved. But that does not mean we are unlovable. It means we need to find our love elsewhere. It means we need to build our own families, choose our own people, create our own safe spaces. It means we need to walk away with our heads held high, knowing that we did nothing wrong, knowing that we deserve better, knowing that somewhere out there are people who will see us and value us and love us exactly as we are. That is the lesson my sister's wedding taught me, and as painful as it was to learn, I would not trade it for anything. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar with your family? Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? Share your story in the comments below. You might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, yet hit that subscribe button so you do not miss more stories like this one. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you all the love you deserve, the family you choose, and the freedom to be exactly who you are. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.